Tuesday, March 11th, work session of the Marlington Local School District Board of Education.
Josh Hagan. Here. Karen Humphries.
Here.
Kathy.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hagan.
Yes.
Mr. Swift.
Yes.
Ms. Humphries.
Yes.
Ms. Krupko.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Review board policies.
Okay, we have Ed Holland here from Neola to do basically twice a year. He does fall and spring. So we, as I talked about earlier, we're going to bring him in to do our spring policies. Then these would come up for first reading on this coming week's board meeting. So I'll let him take the floor from here, and he will make the adjustments as we go along.
Then occasionally you may end up with some special updates. This year with the lame duck session, we've had tons of special updates. And you're going to get a couple more, maybe even as of tonight. So we're not really sure. In the conference call this morning with attorneys and everybody, we find that there's still some more correction that the new laws were passed in December now have to be corrected again. So I will get those to you. If they're easy enough changes, nothing major, or things that we're already working on, you may wait on. But if it's complicated, we need a little more time. But definitely you'll have the volume 43, number 2 ready, which is ready now, for your overview. What I wanted to do is go over those items unless you have questions about what we need to work on. We'll go over the volume 43, number 2 revisions. Good. So the first one is bylaw 0131.1, technical corrections. This one comes as a revised, as a recommended change from our clients.
Just more, they'll be on the big board up here. So have that up there. Right, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. And I'm not sure if I can make it a little larger, but is that large enough for everybody? For the most part. Let me see if I can, sometimes because I don't want to make that change, it may not. Is that still too small or better? That's good. All right, good. So the changes that we have recommended here are coming from clients who would like to streamline the technical correction process for policies. There's always been confusion. We send all the changes to the board for board approval, or we just send ones that are substantial changes of procedures and policies. So with the technical corrections, we tried to tweak it last year, and some of our clients were like, yeah, my board just says, go ahead and make those changes. Don't waste the time with us. Tell us about it. So we restructured the bylaw to deal with technical corrections where if the superintendent meets these standards at the bottom of that last line about what is a technical change, like change of section headings, titles, chapters, the policies, anything that's non-substantial. Yeah, that's good. Thanks. And then the superintendent would make those changes and then make an information note to the board at the board meeting saying, we've changed this policy, and this policy. Maybe it's all the discrimination policies. And therefore, we made that adjustment, and you don't have to really vote on it. So if the board member or the whole board says, oh, wait a minute, that's a little more substantial change. You're actually changing procedures or the policy more than just correcting something. Then you just run it through the normal board process, like what you're going to do starting next Thursday, first reading, second reading. So it was a process to help streamline. Let me see if I can move to the next one. By doing that, it would change bylaw 0171, and you would no longer need this bylaw because you're streamlining those steps out. And therefore, you would rescind bylaw 0171, review of policy. It's not saying you're not going to review policy, and then there's some additional bylaws that are associated with 0171.1 and so on that get into more specifics on different types of policies that you'd be reviewing. So that's why you would have these two different bylaws. If you're not going to take the first change in 131, technical corrections, you would need to rescind it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The next one, and then guys, just feel free to stop me. The next one is expanding our drug-free workplace policies. We have them for professional staff and classified staff. Professional staff's a 3,000, classified's in the 4,000s. About 5-6 years ago, we started moving our administrative policies out of professional policies and separate them. So now you have tonight 1422.01, drug-free workplace for administrators. So administrative policies are in the 1,000s, 3,000s is for professional staff, and 4,000s for classified staff. So what I did, as you'll see here in the top, I compared this new policy for you to your existing 3122.01 for professional staff and just matched it up. The only real difference of these two policies is that your professional staff are collectively bargained, but your administrators are not. So there's no reference to a union contract in there. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You also need the drug-free workplace policies for federal monies, some of the federal regulations that you are using money for. You would have to have these policies in place.
So how does that affect, like, when they do casino night and any of that? Because those are district-related events? No? You have a typo?
I'm sorry?
There's a typo in there.
Ooh, where?
Point it out.
The third line of the second paragraph, while involved in any district, is while has got 2 L's in it instead of an I.
Oh.
Maybe it is an I.
Property
tell.
or while
Might-
involved?
Yeah,
No, it's
Is that-
yeah.
because of the other I.
You're saying in the third
The dot on the
paragraph?
I is just blurry. It's WHILE, it's correct.
No.
Oh, in the second paragraph.
You know, you're right, it is.
Is it blurred or is
2 L's.
It just looked like an eye.
it looks like an I.
It is,
It is an I?
It is an
It
eye?
is not, it looks
No,
like an
it's not.
L
On up there, it's 2 L's, I swear.
Me and Mark see the other.
There's a little blip.
2 L's.
It's just blurry. It's out of focus.
It's just blurry.
It's 2 L's.
It's an
got a
I.
little dot.
Go look now.
Got a little dot.
It does not look like any of the other I's up there.
I agree, but it is an eye on
It is an eye. It is an eye, just verified.
board doc.
Thank you for verifying, Mr. Ryan.
absolutely.
We can't see that
You
anyway.
weren't going to win the battle otherwise.
I was trying to figure out how can I blow it up large enough for everybody to see.
Blow it up this big.
That's why I have my glasses on.
It's really out of focus.
It can get buggy. All right, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, I'm done.
Single gender classes and activities. So you have this policy, and therefore we're updating it, and we're making some of the provisions match what state and federal rules are. We also checked the idea that your Title IX coordinator will be responsible for overseeing compliance, and because it would be a sex-based complaint, if they want to complain about having these classes or not being involved in them, then you would be able to go to your Title IX coordinator to file a complaint.
This is just all legal.
It is, this last statement, it's questionable on whether you want the actual statement. I think what it is doing, it's
Where it's crossed out.
carrying off some of yours. If we could cut back just a little, or scroll over, there you go. Perfect. So as you see, I don't know if you have same sex, same gender classes, maybe an all-boys choir or something like that. So the question is whether you actually need the policy, but you have it, so you would probably want to update it. The other extent is this last sentence. If you have it, your current language would say transgender students shall be permitted to participate in single-gender classes in a manner consistent with gender identity. Well, if you're fully aware that the state of Ohio has passed a restroom bill which dedicates restroom use by how it's designated and by biological sex. So part of these provisions, if they're in a single gender or sex class and they do a field trip and there's going to be overnight accommodations, a transgender individual may not qualify to be able to stay in the same accommodations with them. So if you're going to accept this last statement, you would have to say, to the extent permitted by law, because the new law just went into effect here on the 25th of February, or except as prohibited by law, transgender students shall be permitted. So this is
So the way
an
you have
option.
it, the way you have it structured, it's crossed out, you're recommending.
I can't recommend any, but I
Well,
think
mean,
this
that's
was,
why you're here, right?
yeah, I can strongly suggest how the board would act on that with that strong suggestions. And of course, this is a decision you guys have to make. If you were to keep it in here, it would keep this first, come on, get off there.
You currently have it deleted. Can we just leave it the way it is right now?
Right. If you don't want to accept those changes, what you would say is, to the extent permitted by law, transgender students shall be permitted to participate in single gender classes.
I would go back to what you had. We'll accept the changes that you had up there.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Go back to what you had,
What we
Yeah,
had.
Take it out.
where you had it taken out.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Moving on. The next one deals with College Credit Plus. Your College Credit Plus laws and procedures have changed through Senate Bill 104. They allow a November notification and for students to be able to start in the College Credit Plus second semester instead of having to wait and go for a full year. So with the procedures now, you're allowed to enroll in the fall for second semester courses. And so we've made these adjustments here. College Credit Plus, students can participate in either sections. In the past, you were only allowed to do the orientation in the spring and then get ready to participate for a whole year. Now, if you want to wait and just do second semester or one semester, you can.
Dan, is that an issue?
No, this is correct, what he put up there. These changes we have to... This is just legal changes, basically. All he's saying is typically we have a student has to have, like, by the April 1st deadline for College Credit Plus next year. Now we're adding in the fact that you can sign up in November with principal thing for second semester in case you don't want to do it first semester. It used to be the April 1st deadline was for CCP for the whole year. This gives the flexibility of a student being able just to do spring semester, not fall.
But if it's a year-long class,
Well, you just wouldn't take that class.
okay, so it would only be a semester
would
class
be
if they could do
limited.
that with.
Correct.
Okay.
You mean at the university or here?
Either one.
Yeah. The other statement is just another heading we should have added in there. Our attorneys decided to add a general requirements heading because really the rest of this text is about the general requirements. Superintendent will use the College Credit Plus forms that are created by the Chancellor and the Department of the Due. Questions? The next one is field trips, other district. Let me scroll back down. So it will be policy 2340, field and other district-sponsored trips. And this is updated based on the new requirements of the restroom bill provision. State law states that members of the opposite biological sex are prohibited from sharing overnight accommodations. You have this option here at the end. It's recommended, that's why we put it in here, but we leave it as an option. Provisions for the selection of lodging for overnight trips that provide for a safe and secure environment. I mean, everybody would assume that you're doing that, but some of our clients want to see it in there.
Dan? Redundant?
It seems redundant to me. You can take it off.
That extra line? Yeah.
The next one deals with participation in community school, STEM school for extracurricular activities, 2430.02. This is part of a correction that should have come out in October, but because there was some confusion on, is this a requirement or is it optional language that a district can take? Remember about the situation where you had athletes who claimed that they were bullied and harassed, I think here in Stark County, and then that individual and those three individuals, I guess it was, were able to petition and leave that district to where they were at on a team being harassed and go to another district nearby and be able to participate in athletics.
With superintendent agreement.
With the superintendent agreement.
Can students that attend the school do that?
Say that again?
Can students that attend the school do that?
So there's a law in play. Basically what he's talking about is, let's just say student X, Y, and Z in Marlington petition to leave Marlington in the middle of season, beginning of the season for, say, basketball, football, softball, and they decide to go to Alliance, Minerva, West Branch. Usually by the OHSAA standards, if you leave any time given the school year and you've already participated in a year, you have to sit the second half of the season. So basically you can participate in the first half, but the second half you have to sit. That's kind of your transfer punishment. You know, this will bypass that. What that law does, bypass that, and basically you claim harassment or bullying, and then if the superintendents agree, then that student gets to bypass the OHSAA rule and they immediately get to continue to play athletics.
Now, it's also important to note that Ohio High School Athletic Association has established very strict criteria and guidelines to determine what really is bullying and harassment.
Yeah.
And so John, who wants to wrestle at a bigger school, can't just go. He's got to demonstrate that he's gone through process of harassment, bullying, hazing, or whatever, and then if the Ohio High School Association believes and you work through that process, superintendents at those two districts can agree, yes, that's better for the student, then they can go. So it's not just I want to go. There's very strict standards and guidelines. And that's what has developed since the law was first approved, like back in October. So that's why we wanted to make sure that there are some changes. So do you want to keep that option? I bring that up because there are three policies that you have to address tonight that have the same provision. So if you accept it in one, you should accept it in all three.
No, I think the recommendation is to accept that in
Okay.
green, and then that
And
would
it's
follow
may,
suit.
you may do it, and you
Correct.
never know what kind of situations happen. And so you have some flexibility to help children. I'm just taking a little extra time to do this editing so our production office doesn't criticize me for not doing my job, and they can turn this around quickly for you. Because right now, most of my clients' stuff is turned around in 2 weeks. Because then if they have to go through and do the extra steps. All right, the next one will move us to Interscholastic Athletics, 2431. Yeah, do I not have? There you go. This is the one that I edit. So what I do, I take your existing policies, and then I'll take the edits that are changed by law on our templates, and I'll merge them together. So when Dan and his team's taking a look at it, they're looking at your policy with the edits merged into it. If you're like in Jackson doesn't believe in doing that. They start fresh every template and work through that whole process. I'm not sure why, but they like, that's how Delo's done it for years, and he doesn't want to change. So prior to the start of the athletic season, we're talking about having your informal awareness training meetings, dealing with athletic trainers for cardiology and, you know, the new rules about sudden cardiac arrest and concussion protocols are now implemented into the Ohio High School Athletic Association. So when we move on into this policy, you'll see that optional language again. The superintendent may grant any homeschool educated or qualifying other local schools that are in the Ohio High School Athletic Association, kids that may be bullied and want to go into the athletic programs. So there are conditions, again, on how that individual can get transferred and allow them to continue to participate in athletics. And then just correction on College Credit Plus titling. The next one will be special education. This one looks like it's a lot of change, but it's really not. So make a long story short, you know, we moved from the Department of Education and the Ohio Department of Education into the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. And so with that change, that new department tried to restructure the Ohio model, policies and procedures for special education. They made those attempts last summer and then told everybody that boards have to have a policy. We've always said that. And in the past, having a policy demonstrated that you're going to use the state model or create your own model. They also wanted, I think after they tweaked it, they wanted all school districts to pass a resolution stating that you will use the state model or you will create your own. You guys have always used the state model. So the special ed policy states that you're using the state model. So that's the easy part of it. The more difficult part is that you're supposed to pass a resolution demonstrating that you would change and accept the state model, the way that it's presented and restructured by the due. However, it looked on the surface that it was fine, but until the ESCs started to get involved in it, and a lot of the ESCs are doing extended school year for students with disabilities, and some of those are doing 5, maybe 6 weeks at the most. There's extended requirements from the due to do more, and I think it sparked some changes. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute. See if I can come up here and find this.
So what he's talking about is on our March meeting, it was on our February meeting, is the due requires a yearly, so we'll do it in August, like a resolution basically saying that we use the model policies, which we do. You guys we're just confirming that our special education department does it. But they wanted it to be uploaded, that the board passed it by March 31st. However, they have now since wavered and said you now can have it uploaded by May 31st, which makes no difference to us.
And that's because they found that their new current regulations that they restructured violate 4 areas that have already been dealt with in case law in the past. And so if you're going to approve and use the state model, you want to make sure you're approving a resolution that says that you take the whole model minus these errors. And so therefore, your resolution would be this first resolution, because you didn't approve one yet, right?
No, that'll be this Thursday.
All right, so the first one, option 1, if the board has not yet adopted the dues model policy. So this first one is simply stating that you're going to be approving and accepting the state model resolution, or the state model policies and procedures for special education minus these errors. So further resolved, then the board approves that you'll use the state models as modified herein. Make sense?
Correct.
This is what you want to do unless you want to go against case law and approve what they're putting in there, which is a problem.
Yeah, what happens, what's the alternative than voting for this?
You'll join the lawsuit probably when all the parents sue the state, and if you go that. But that's the problem. I've got clients, I probably have 30 of my clients already approved the original resolution that they wanted, and the state kept pushing all fall to get it done, and we weren't comfortable. We released it in October. And then in December, the end of December, we learned with the ESCs that there's these 4 errors. And so this is what you want to approve, and you'll continue to do the same good work that you do for children with disabilities.
Pledge allegiance to the due.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'll make sure that.
So just make
I'll
sure
follow
you
up.
approve this one.
I'll follow up.
Option
with
1.
The double check tomorrow on the board docs, make sure that's the one that's on there, the resolution.
You're good. So I'll go back to special ed. Your policy has to be approved as well. You just have to do the policy and then the annual resolution. Do this one before May 30th, and then do it again in August before school starts. Next one should be 5113, which is open enrollment. Now, because of this fine work and the funding model, a lot of districts are receiving no real financial benefits to open enrollment. So quite a few districts are dropping the open enrollment. Because of that, I just heard again today that, and I don't know how true this is, that the state legislators in the new biennial budget, they're looking at requiring everybody to have open enrollment because people are dropping it, because there's no financial gain to it. So at one point, there was financial gain to open your doors. I don't know if you're making any real money on it, or if you're at the guarantee.
We're at the guarantee, but I know with the governor's new biennium budget, which I'll address a little bit on Thursday, you know, at least what the preliminary numbers look like. Legislators, both the House and Senate, agree to the budget bill, how that will affect our district. We are in the guarantee. That is basically pulling us off the guarantee is what it's doing, which is it's basically recorrecting itself. So, you know, obviously in a layman's terms, the foundation formula is built on basically two main factors. Obviously, I think it's, you know, your valuations of your property. So obviously our valuations in our property and our recent property valuations went up 33.1%.
Wonder why they did that.
So we look extremely more wealthy than what we currently
Absolutely.
are. And obviously enrollment.
Yes, they take more money away from us.
And then obviously enrollment trends over the years. Obviously, like everybody else in Stark County, enrollment has declined percent. So they basically count those two things together. There's obviously other factors that I don't understand in the formula, but those are the main two. And basically look at districts that way. So I think the urban districts that have their valuations aren't as high are starting to gain more money on the new biennium budget, where districts that are more rural or small town like we are going to take a bigger hit, as I'll demonstrate on Thursday. So open enrollment doesn't necessarily, I agree with you, we are not gaining money in the last few years on the new fair funding, but we're also have to be cautiously optimistic about what leaves that we bring back in. So we've really limited our open enrollment in the past. Like we used to accept everybody that came. Now we are it's based on the exact amount of teachers we currently have without adding and where our class sizes are.
Yeah, so you're putting some restrictions on it.
We're not bringing in more than probably out of the 40 or 80 that applied in the last 2 years that I've done it. This will be my third, maybe 21.
And you're permitting them from any district, not
Correct.
just adjacent
No,
district.
and they actually will approve at this board meeting their same resolution they do for inter and intra open enrollment.
And keeping it the same.
Even at the
That's
same.
That's how I edited it and prepared this for you.
I have to upload that too. I think I just got the due does require that to be uploaded also in the
Yeah.
resolution.
Well, yeah, you would always have to do that every year.
Correct.
Upload your
Policy.
open enrollment policy.
Correct.
With talk of the legislature requiring it, would there be funding attached to that?
Oh, I'm sure.
So if you
No.
took, no?
Absolutely. Why would they change the
Well, it wouldn't
funding?
make any sense if you're bringing in these kids, you're not getting any help on the tax side.
So that's
Tax.
what's going to be the challenge, and trying to balance out and find the biennial budget. And they'll always wait till last minute and say, okay, well, maybe the schools need a little bit more, so then they'll add that residual budget money that's left over from the budgeting back to schools. It's just now starting those debates and the discussions. There'll be some compromise by the end of June. So just keep an eye on it, what it's going to do to impact you. Some of the reps that I'm hearing from say, just keep what you have and things will go well. It's like, don't drop open enrollment. Well, why?
Our current operating protocol is correct right now. I mean, we shouldn't close our.
And you're not hurting.
And we're not hurting our doors either.
Well, I'm just thinking of districts that don't have it, so they're just telling those districts, if you don't have open enrollment, just,
Yeah, I've got a couple of wealthy districts that I work with, and they're dropping them because they don't want the extra students, and it's not bringing them any extra money, so they're dropping open enrollment. And because of all that was going on, that's why we're bringing it forward, to give all districts an opportunity to examine it, and then also to add in armed forces. So if you have children of parents who are deployed from here in Ohio, and they're coming here because their grandparents live here, you have to enroll them. You can't deny them. Even if you have no open enrollment, you have to accept them.
Correct.
So those are some of the law changes. That's what you're seeing here for a member of the Armed Forces of the United States that are on full-time active duty.
I mean, where else would they go if you didn't?
Absolutely, no, absolutely.
You'd be shocked though, where
Could-
districts
you'd
would
be
not allow,
surprised.
would
Yeah.
not allow
Crazy.
kids to come in even with their parents and armed, that way. So that's why some of those came out. We have not been that way.
So we've just tweaked all the language with the current changes. You'll see a lot of stuff that's struck mainly because it's only pertaining to adjacent districts or other non-open enrollment districts. And so I tweaked this to reflect what you just said. You're still allowing open enrollment from other districts and the military, and then superintendent's responsible for establishing those guidelines dealing with district capacity and so on. We've also tweaked, or you may want to keep your current guidelines on how you're letting them in. You just can't prohibit military.
No, we're letting them in based on the law. I mean, pretty much where we're at for open enrollment.
So this one then in essence is correct and ready to go.
And we base everything based on class size, and then obviously if it's a student that may have a particular disability of any type of kind, we basically just have to decide, can we service that model of that type of student? If not, that's really the only reasons you could deny a student for open enrollment.
Correct. Oh. Just moved it. So the next one deals with student assignment within the district. For some reason, I have multiple copies in here. And you're only going to look at the ones that I've edited for you. And you'll see my initials and the review are ready under the code. Assignment within the district. You still have to maintain racial balance amongst your school district schools, and updating the gender, race, and protected classes with the new language.
What exactly does that mean, maintain racial balance within the school? I mean, if the balance, like if you have multiple schools and then if they're covered by area, not by the district, would that force you to put minorities into another school than the one where they live?
You could, and whatever that minority is, but if you've got only one building per grade level, then that's not going to be any option. But if you're in a large urban setting and you have students who are moving into the district, let's say there's a big housing development in one section of town, and will that housing development with new students coming in change the racial balance?
Well, that's what I was questioning. Since we have 3 elementary schools, would that affect them?
No.
No?
No, our balance
Okay.
is fine.
And with the open enrollment,
If we were a larger district, and a little more tighter driven, that would be by numbers, but we're not. I mean, based our balance of, obviously most of our race is white, but we do, obviously the minorities we do have they're not really set to one particular area in our district. They're kind of, balance themselves out through that way.
My main concern was, would it force you to move a student into a different building that would be
might,
further from their home?
if things would change drastically.
I think this has been in our policies, or?
It is.
Nothing, this is just his normal update. This isn't anything that this would be a policy I probably would not have looked at unless he brings it up, in a session like this.
And we're bringing it up because the DO had made recommended procedures for student assignment, and therefore these recommendations are brought forward. You have them already in place. These are just some of the changes. So adding where you had a wholesome and educationally sound balance of student population, they're making the recommendation to maintain a racial balance amongst the district schools.
Who determines the balance?
Well, it is what it is, where you're at. And then does it change significantly?
Yeah, but who comes in? The state comes in and says, we don't like the balance? I mean, who determines that?
Unless there's some kind of litigation or investigation or a complaint in Civil Rights Commission that certain rights have been
So
violated.
there's no
Police?
There's no police coming and say, oh, we don't like the balance here.
No.
Shift students.
It happens only when somebody files a complaint. Question?
Is that an N or an M?
It looks like an N, announced.
You guys are keeping me honest.
That's got to be an N.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that's an N.
Caught one.
I for
Oh, no.
Announced.
Maybe it's a.
You got me
it's
onto
a-
it.
yeah, some legal word.
Oh. And because I did the editing, I don't know.
programs. It's so hard. They're harder to learn than anything.
Got it back up.
I don't know, yeah, it may not allow me to make that change, because I put it in there. Okay, so I had to strike the N,
Oh, my God.
so it's AMONGST, correct?
Yeah.
The editor is not that easy and not user-friendly. You got to use keystrokes in it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Keeps you from sneaking stuff in there.
And you can't use spell checkers on it, I don't think. All right, technical correction for student transfers. We made these changes back in October. It shouldn't have been added to student transfers because it doesn't have anything to do with student transfers within a district. So when you guys made the changes, you took out these sentences in the first two options. So we need you to decide, do you want to keep this language the way that it's edited, or should we return like the second paragraph? The board will send necessary release to the executive director, which actually is the commissioner now.
It's
of the
actually,
Ohio High School.
the second one down that's crossed out is what should be in there. Because when we do have a student who transfers, we do send a letter to the OHSAA.
And that's
And that-
why I questioned this without saying it. The second line in the third paragraph, therefore, it will not take the necessary actions. So you just want to make sure. You would normally take the necessary actions to release them, right?
We've done it. I mean, I know.
That's what I mean.
Well,
So
you condone
you would
it.
strike out that last sentence, therefore,
Correct.
board will not take the necessary actions. So
Correct.
you will do that.
But that
So-
second line should not be crossed out.
The second paragraph.
The second paragraph.
You're talking about third paragraph. Third paragraph.
So this second one, you do want to return it.
Yes.
Right.
That's what we do.
They send the necessary release to the executive director.
Oh, I didn't edit it yet.
Basically, if a student, same with anybody else, we get a student transfer from another district, we'll get a letter from the OHSAA or the district that basically will, if they reside in the district, if they don't, or they meet the student, they have to meet the need for eligibility requirements. So that way you're just not getting students that, you have to demonstrate to the OHSAA that, they have their own strict requirements, so and we have to basically meet those and show that burden of proof that this student is good, or we end up, could be forfeiting a season, forfeiting games, you name it. So when it comes to the amount of athletes, like in a district our size, you'd say 75% of our kids are in some type of athletic or interscholastic event, we have to be very careful, that we're meeting and residing in the guidelines, at least our athletic director is more or less, and vice versa, working with the other districts. This is nothing new. This is normal.
Yeah. And your third paragraph then is correct?
Yes.
The way it's edited?
Yes.
Very good. And then this is the old language about the bullying individual, allowing them to come here. It's not technically a student transfer, so it shouldn't be in this policy. We're removing it. So it's a correction. The next one. 5223, release time for religious instruction. Now, this one's going to be, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Because I'm going to order on here versus my update sheet, this is one that has to be corrected from the Senate Bill 29 corrections that we approved in October, which I think you approved it already. I think it was in January. Look at my notes, hang on a second. So the 5136, you guys had already approved it. You have to update this correction and do this one again.
Okay.
Because some of the Senate Bill 29 items had certain language in it that really was not viable language in the state of Ohio, and therefore we had to restructure and correct this. And this one here deals with third-party providers for technology, and you'll see that it'll be corrected also. 6460 is another correction. So you had already just done this one. You've got to do it again now, unfortunately.
Okay.
And I marked it to reflect what you already just approved and the new changes.
So basically, Senate Bill 29 was passed in rather hasty fashion, and the legislation went into law. And basically, the intent behind the bill when it was brought up was basically that parents should be informed when things are dealing with, let's say, suicide, extreme, danger, something within that would affect the safety and well-being of the student or the school district. The problem was there's many districts in Ohio that were not informing parents, or at least that's typically how legislation comes about. And in their hastiness, they just went ahead and did that and then tacked on everything. So basically, if a teacher would look up a student's grade, we'd have to notify the parent. If you used Google Classroom, you have to notify the parent. If you go on Schoology, you have to notify the parent. If the kid logs into his iPad, we have to notify the parent. So they didn't think it through, so the backlash was obviously enormous. Mm-hmm. So they immediately said, the intent was this, districts, we're not going to come get you, but we're going to reframe the law. So then they changed it and then did this. But really it's just there's like A, B, C, and D, and it's basically safety driven. Like, we do need to notify you as a parent if there's something going on with your child that's in particular that could be extremely harmful to themselves or the school. Or I think they did leave. If they lose their device and we track it, we have to notify you that they lost their device. So if they lost their iPad or something.
The correction was right around Christmas. Governor signed it. We made the changes. It's a much better law now because it's protecting children is what it was. And there were also provisions that teachers were going to be disciplined and possibly lose license and so on. All that stuff's been corrected. So this is a correction for one that has direct threats and giving the parents notice or the 72-hour notice. That has been cleaned up. So the two changes are much, much better.
So we do have that in place. Already we have that design, and where we send out a notice to the parents if any of those particular things would have to come up, then we have that. We can track that individually.
So this one is Dan's favorite one. This is release time for religious instruction during the school day. So this is a big challenge. And with the law that was, again, hastily approved last minute in December, has created some challenges for schools and trying to figure out when do you do release time for religious instruction. So you have to be able to provide that. Our attorneys made recommendations to put some restrictions and provide districts a little more flexibility, but also some controls on it. I'm hearing from this morning that there may be some adjustments to this in the very, very near future. So I would recommend you kind of hold on to to it yet until you get the corrected version, which should come out this week.
But can we just table this then?
Yeah, that's what I would do.
I mean, there's no need to basically for the board to approve something that's legal and then a week later it'll be.
And then you got to come and do a special update and change on it. Based on what I heard with our meetings with attorneys this morning, kind of hold on it just a little bit.
Weren't we at one point required to have a policy for that?
You still are. But do we want to make sure we have the policy that's correct?
Okay, but what's the deadline for the requirement?
Let me see if I have that in my notes.
Probably want to still.
April 9th.
We will not have.
Pushing it.
We won't have a
Maybe
policy.
second reading,
We won't
don't
have.
you?
We won't have a policy in place by April 9th.
Yeah, we'd need a second reading to have it by April.
But that's
9th.
when the law goes into effect. I think you're required to have policy by July 1st.
Oh,
Okay.
July, okay. I was going to say, we'd have to have it on there if it was.
You see, all these laws were approved at the end of December, and then you had the time frame for them to go into effect, because they weren't approved as emergency measures. They had a 90-day provision. So, the only other thing too, I guess one of the questions I have, you guys had created unique special language in your active policy. So the other question is, do we want to even make any of those changes? In your current policy, somewhere, I've got to try to get through this here. There we go. This is your current policy that you have. It was approved back in 2016. Of course, those provisions have changed quite a bit, and the law changed just within the last 5 months. You're dealing with same kind of scenario, and the question is, do you want to make changes? Because you're allowing release time for religious instruction. So this may meet your needs.
So I knew we had policy and I knew about that policy. So my only question was, I saw that you had that on tonight that we're tabling. We're basically come April 9th, the law goes into effect. This policy would work for us, correct?
I believe.
I mean, we've had it since 2016, basically allowing.
And you're allowing the intent of the law. That's the issue. And so do you,
So if you say yes, it does, then I don't see the need to even look at the other policy or even put it on if our 2016 policy works.
and that's a local decision. And so let's see what the new interpretations of that law are coming down the pike this week. You may want to try to incorporate some of that in there. You may not. You may be meeting the spirit of the law and allowing that to happen. The only thing that I see that might be the challenge is that the statute requires you to collaborate with the organizations that want to do the religious instruction.
Wait and see.
So,
And that's what's missing, the wording.
from what I
that
see,
wording's missing.
from what I see here, yeah. So when we take a look at your policy, look at the new interpretations of it, you're going to have a better policy. So just kind of wait a little bit.
Okay.
And honestly, because some of the litigation that's in the process of filing right now, from what I heard this morning, that April 9th is not going to be a hard deadline. So we're going to hold that one. The next one's use of medications, 5330. Maybe. So your use of medications, putting in the new regulations as far as allowing over-the-counter drugs to be dispensed. There was always a controversy on are you dealing with just prescription meds, and over-the-counter drugs were no longer allowed to be distributed. Now you're allowed to do that, but you have to have it in your policies. So we've made the adjustments based on the law changes and based on what your current practice is. Just review this and make sure that it's accurately reflects your practice. Make sure you review it with your nursing staff or medical staff and see if they're comfortable with that.
We currently do give out aspirin, Tylenol, but it's still permission. It's based on our policy. Like if it's prescription medication, it has to come in the actual bottle with the prescription and they sign off on it. If it's over the counter, it can come in per day or that week, but they sign off on that, and then it's still logged in the book with the nurse or our trained personnel that does it. Correct.
Yeah, it's a fine line because the children, and especially high school girls, are going to be carrying Advil, and nobody knows, or it's normal. I mean, so you would expect them to be able to do that.
That's good. You can go on.
Your next one, dealing with the changes in the well-being or student mental health provisions and training. 5350, these revisions reflect the new laws based on change in training requirements and awareness programming for students in grades 6 through 12.
These are all legal.
So this one is ready to go.
Okay.
The next was graduation requirements. No, we did not change graduation requirements, but the new regulations stipulate that you have to have in your policy the seals. We've always had them in this sentence here underneath the listing of the different seal options, but it's recommended that they actually be in the policy, and therefore we've added them to the policy for you. There's really no change, it's just the layout. Next one is significant change for student removal, suspension, expulsions, 5610. With the new law changes, allow some,
So the one he's going to review is just a law change, basically, when it comes
we
to
have
expelling a
powers
student.
somewhere.
We have an option to, based on particular scenarios, to be able to extend that expulsion to longer than X amount of days. But it's not.
So you will have some flexibility called eminent. Students who possess eminent and severe endangerment to the health and safety of the students. You have this option now. I've added it. I don't know why you would not, but it's what I would strongly suggest. And therefore, you would also add that provision to the levels of suspension and expulsion, and your levels of expulsion for a student who's bringing a firearm to school or weapon, then you're allowed to reinstate them back in. And how you would do that reinstatement. So the other law then is number 4, dealing with eminent and severe endangerment. That's gives you a little more flexibility in dealing with suspension and expulsions.
It's good.
Extension cords in the bottom of the toolbox.
We're running across the street.
what's the next one you have, Ed?
The next one deals with parental status of students. We haven't updated this for a while. There's some recommendations to provide additional accommodations. I'm not sure if this is a trend that you're seeing in your district, but there are some trends in some of the additional districts throughout the state, and therefore you need to be able to provide additional reasonable accommodations. Since this is related to a sex or gender issue, there's recommendations that your Title IX coordinator should be added to this policy to allow students and individuals who are in this situation and may have a complaint because they're not afforded some accommodations or afforded the ability to express milk in a reasonable fashion in the building or district, and therefore they have to have somebody to complain to.
Where it says activity, would that include sports?
It includes sports.
Includes anything.
So the district couldn't keep a pregnant person from playing contact sport?
Well, it would go to the Title IX, file a Title IX complaint.
So, yeah, a recommendation would go to your Title IX
that's
coordinator.
not necessarily discrimination, I wouldn't think.
To,
Earn her doctor, apparently.
So
I didn't hear the question.
I'm saying if you had a pregnant student that wanted to play a contact sport, your own policy would prohibit you from keeping them from playing a contact sport.
Depends on how far along they are, but yeah,
Might need-
I don't think they
shouldn't
would
there,
want to do
shouldn't there be
that.
some
Doctors,
exception to that? I mean,
Require a doctor's.
That would be.
I hope that wouldn't
be
happen,
your
but it
Title
technically
IX coordinator to
could.
investigate that. And
then the district would be liable.
So with these changes, you would need to select who is going to be developing a schedule with the student, trying to make accommodations so the individual will be able to express.
So I'll have
milk.
Nicole, I'll put a note in here, so I'll have Nicole insert, well, we have 2 Title IX coordinators, since I'm the decision maker on the legal side of it. So, so Nick Evanich is a Title IX coordinator and trained, Renee Cayley's a Title IX coordinator and trained, as I am, but I can't be the coordinator and the decision maker.
Correct.
So I am the, at the end, so they'll.
There has to be an appeal process.
I'm the appeal process. So it's, I'm completely out of it on this. So those will be the 2 that I'll have those names inserted.
And
Added on the second.
it's common for this first provision of dealing with modification stuff related to school. Maybe your school counselor that may be working with those students now, but then do you have your nurse or guidance counselor or principal work with the individual to be able to set up a schedule to work around the student's schedule to help?
I would check all 3 of those if this scenario would be in case. So there's say pregnant students and students recovering from childbirth may request reasonable modifications to support their pregnancy-related needs by contacting is it the principal, school counselor, school nurse? I would say it would be A, B, and C. Or could be A,
Could
B,
be.
and C, not is.
It wouldn't have to be all 3.
It would not have to be all 3, but, the principal and school counselor would be the 2 key components there. School nurse, I don't see that as one that would be reached out to, but it's not unreasonable.
And you need to add in counselor for dealing with lactating students and scheduling and providing a space for them to.
So we already do follow this law, so there, like the second paragraph, that's already there. We already do, that's happens with any of our employees currently. We do not have any, we currently have no students that's gone through that process that I'm aware of.
But if you're listing all 3 up at the top, shouldn't you just put?
Well, these are just options. So at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that
That's what
we're
I'm
there.
saying. Don't put the school counselor in the second paragraph. It's
You
one of the
can.
options for the student to
Yeah.
contact for a space.
Yes.
They're the ones that are more likely working with those students now anyhow with their makeup work or the time that they're out. and since 2011, since we updated it, and we're seeing an increased need for addressing this policy.
The increased need is not at Marlington.
It's good enough.
The next one is the Parents' Bill of Rights, 7580.01. This is something you could review. Know that this is based on the new law of House Bill 8. It goes into effect July 1st, 2025. So you have to have well, it goes into effect on the 9th, but you have to have the policy in place by July 1st. So you could review it if you'd like. A lot of clients are not taking this provision because it's probably already being done in your final forms or providing information to the parents every year about known health care services that may be available through the district or through the county. Questions?
No.
The next one is for Bob. I don't think you have this. You don't have a policy on insufficient funds or bad checks because you guys don't get bad checks?
Not yet.
We've received a few.
Let's hope you don't, but if you do, you don't have this policy, think about it, review it, and see if you need it. If you don't need it, just reject it.
Okay.
Because you've gotten away with not having the policy. It's not one of those laws that you have to have in place. The problem becomes, how do you address bad checks? Parents are paying fees or different things like that, or meals, and therefore it doesn't come through. You're going to be charged fees from your bank. You're allowed to charge those fees back to the individual for sending you a non-sufficient fund check.
It seems like the policy would give the option to take action if appropriate. You know, usually that can be worked out just through the building staff, but I'd be fine to add it, just to have that option available. And I was thinking of like 60 days. I'm not sure what other districts do typically, but that would seem reasonable to me.
That's honestly pretty common, the 60-day window, because you want to give them an opportunity to correct it.
Yes. And I could give more patience in that as well, too. This policy would just make it clear that it had the right to take
Most
action
places would be
necessary.
able to resolve it within a week and say, oh, shoot, I didn't have it, I'll bring the money in. And
Yes.
you want them to try to resolve it. But if it doesn't get resolved, you have to account for it in the state accounting system.
Okay, we'll give Bob the power.
If needed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Bob. You're under
I get struck for some reason.
Bob's collection agent.
I don't know why. Again, you gotta love this thing when it works. I don't know if it's the delay, but that will give you 60 days. Is that good?
That's fine.
Perfect. I'm going to change the heading on here to that you're ready for it. Very good. Next one is the restroom bill, 7421. Nope. I have to back up. The issue is the vendor's relation. This is the bill that was approved back in October, and therefore
It's not.
you will need to update it again because this Senate Bill 29 provisions were changed in December, and we have to update them again. So you set? Just got to make sure that Nicole knows to put these ones in for the board on Thursday.
Yeah, she's going to give you a call tomorrow, make sure that we do that on first reading.
7421, the new restroom bill. This is the new law that went into effect. Senate Bill 104 went into effect on the 25th. We kept hearing that there'll be litigation on both sides of this as soon as it goes into effect. The litigation still hasn't been pulled yet, so as of this morning, I haven't heard that any of the laws have been challenged yet, but I'm hearing that groups are contacting school districts to find out how you're making the accommodations. So,
Yeah, I got one of those letters.
yeah, so. You probably have multi-occupancy restrooms. I saw one across the hall. Even if you're around a gym for, let's say, a basketball game, you got the girls playing, a visiting team, they're coming in, and how do you use locker rooms for the basketball games? You probably have a male boys locker room and a girls locker room, so you just have to change the heading. So then how it's designated is how the biological sex uses that bathroom or changing room.
Yes. Basically what he's, inside the law that's good, I mean, nothing that we really have to change outside of the one thing in the law that is interesting is, so let's just take our gymnasium, for example. We have the girls' locker room on the left, boys' locker room on the right. So if we have a girls' home game, then outside it says boys' locker room, as you know, the visiting girls use that locker room. Technically, we should change the placard to say girls' locker room, because that would be the correct way to do it, is what the law states. Now, is there, you know, so that's something that we're looking into is.
Can we just get like those
attach
magnets that
correct
say girls, boys, and just
yeah,
let-
it's something that
Absolutely.
we've done right now, but I mean, it's just knowing going into.
Yeah, that makes sense though, to prevent
Somebody
people
walking
from
in.
accidentally going in, oh, I thought this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's it. Outside of that, every other portion of the current bill that passed is we currently abide by and have done in the past. So that's the only addition. But we are aware of that.
So this one will be good for you. The only last question on there is the option, you want this last statement, any other person who willfully enters a multi, do you want to be able to remove them or ask them to leave, and maybe even possibly future restrictions? So if you have somebody that willfully goes
Straight to
into
jail.
the, and you're seeing it to make a point, so I recommend having that statement so it at least
Seems
protects you.
appropriate. Yep.
Video surveillance, electronic monitoring, this one is at the request of our clients. Do you have smart sensor monitors in your restrooms? Vape detectors, things like that?
We currently do not.
Do you have it planned?
If we had finances or a grant that would allow us to put vape detectors in our bathrooms, we would.
They
move
are
forward
not
with
cheap.
it.
Didn't we
Correct.
just get a settlement from the vape company?
Because of that, and you don't have them, you don't really plan to do that, you may want to just reject this one. If you think you're going to do that, or you have them, you should.
So I will need, if we choose or find a way to be able to implement vape detectors, we would have to implement this policy, is what you're saying, correct?
Yes, sir. You should. So that way you're providing awareness to the community and your students, parents, that you have these detectors on site and there could be
Do
disciplinary
we have
action.
to have the detectors if we have the policy?
No, but you could have them if you, yeah,
I'm
if you
just
have
saying,
the
if we put the
policy.
policy in and then did it later, it would already be
Correct.
ready.
That's up to you guys.
I'm
I'm
just
fine
saying,
with,
if it's
I'm fine
implemented,
with
we
leaving
don't.
this policy in, even though we don't have it.
Yeah.
It makes no difference. That way I
Right
don't
now, we're patting
forget.
everybody down when they come out looking for vapes.
I would prefer to have this policy in, so I would not forget if we choose to get vape detectors, to be honest with you.
Can't take you anywhere.
Is the board okay with just leaving that in? I know
Yes.
we don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a work session.
Let's leave it in there. For reading. How many we have left, Ed? 3?
No, we don't.
Yeah. And just a couple.
Okay.
Just so the students know, we can implement that at any moment.
So your next one deals with contracted services. Do you contract to have services for students within the district? Maybe you're employing a taxi service that takes students to another alternative school or students to a special ed program.
Yes.
If you do have contracted services, which I think you do, I updated it to reflect that those individuals who are going to be supervising and around students by themselves have to have GCI and entered in the RAT back.
That wasn't in there before?
Yep. And you also check that you're not paying those expenses for them to do the RAT back, correct?
Correct. Not for contracted services.
So that one's ready to go.
Now, here's my question. We are,
There's a device or program that, once they go through the BCI and the fingerprinting every 5 years, 5 years is a long period. For adults, something may happen between that 5-year period that gets them in trouble. And DUI, different things like that, then the RAT back program informs the school district administration and HR
So
of those.
teachers pretty much always in RAT back. Okay, your educational professionals, but who wasn't in RAT back would have been your cooks, custodians, bus drivers, and others. So basically, the law came in that we had to make sure that everybody was enrolled in the RAT back program, basically giving them an OHID. So we spent most of this year educating our staff on how to do that, get the IDs, get them in the program, and so forth. Ed, my question on that last line there, you're talking, this is for contracted services only, correct? You're not talking about directed employees such
That's
as our
correct.
current
But
employees.
you're going to do the same. Any new, somebody coming in or getting the new one, new BCI and so on, you're charging them?
No,
You're not.
not for our certified staff,
Professional staff?
professional staff, no. Not in their current labor management contract.
So are those other employees who are going through the RAT back, you're covering those expenses?
This, we did a one-time around
When you made the
when we
transition
made
to
the
put them in?
transition, but other
correct.
than that, no.
But John gets hired next year, and John has to pay for his own BCI the first
Yep.
time each time.
Yep.
So that's what this is saying. So
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make
business
sure. I did not want to go
employees and
against that.
contractors need to complete a new BCI check,
Yes,
be at their expense.
yes, that's correct.
Anything beyond that, you may be renewing people's that are your current employees.
No, I was just looking at based on current language for professional staff only. That's all. Based on contract.
Okay, then it looks like this is accurate. The next one is
AED.
external defibrillators. The new law, especially with sudden cardiac arrest amongst young men, we're seeing the change in the laws and the availability for you to have AEDs throughout the district, and you have to create an action plan. I don't know any of my clients that have decided to create their own action plan versus using what's from the health department.
Yeah.
We use the health department. We have AEDs more than what's legally required. And
Didn't
then
we have
obviously we do
grant for
train our
AEDs?
staff on location. Based on law, we have to review the staff every 9 weeks, the location of those AEDs and any questions they have.
Good.
And then we do-
Didn't we get a grant for AEDs, or was there one
we did years ago when I first started with AEDs, we had a grant, and then since then, no, we've had to purchase an update. But then when Nick Evanich basically was the leader in the $500,000 safety grant, we were able then to get a few additional AEDs and upgrade some of our others.
That's what I remember.
Yep.
Questions? So this is set, you're going to use the health department. Last one, and probably the most cumbersome one, is food services. With a lot of the changes in the federal regulations and food services and the challenges that the district food service operators have pertaining to milk substitutes and making the options of almond milk, soy milk, different options than regular whole milk and so on. There's now requirements. I would recommend, because this is very cumbersome and you want to make sure that your food service coordinator is involved in it, have that person review it and sit down and go over this with that individual. You also have to know and recognize that if you have students being released for religious instruction and the only time they can go is at lunchtime, you have to provide the opportunity for them to take lunch with them.
That we're aware of.
So all of those items are highlighted in here, and it is not for the faint of heart. So
let me ask you a question. If I review this with our food service coordinator, is there
Ready to pass this.
and that's what we've done. Is there certain options she has to choose per section? Is that correct, based on what we currently do, all of which are legal?
There's some changes in what you're doing, so you'll need to go through it. And your food service coordinator or supervisor, whatever you call them, should be in their network, and especially through the county. They know that this is coming. They don't like it, but they have to work through it and establish the policy based on the new guidelines.
Is there a deadline on this policy?
The one that goes into effect April 9th, along with all the others that were signed. I just don't have that at my fingertips, but I'm sure it's going to involve all of next school year.
Okay,
so you
so-
should do it before I would.
Well, I'm
say
not going to
before
be able
July
to get
1st.
with my food service before Thursday, so can we table this one?
Yes, because you got to have that person's input on this.
Okay.
Treasurer should probably review it with them too, because it deals with insufficient checks or
I see the,
back monies and so on. So if you guys could work through that together.
there's
Okay.
multiple options here.
And I'm sure Jackie's fully aware of what's coming. I mean, I know I think it's interesting, we've gone 3 different food audits this year, so they've been here, things have gone fairly well, so I know she's
Good. Yeah.
big learning curve for her this year.
I've had a couple of them come to our meetings with superintendents and go over this, and they leave in tears. It's big, and it just takes a lot of work, so just be patient with them to work through it, and I think Bob and them can, when you read the directions and the notes that we put in there, make it easier for you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I mean, question for you, Ed. Does this mean that we have to provide all these type of milk alternatives and pay for it, or can we charge the student for it outside the free lunch, free?
Correct. You can. And
Okay.
because that's always been the hard part of not getting reimbursed for certain things.
Yeah.
And then now you will be.
Okay.
But trying to balance out, do you offer just almond milk? Do you offer oatmeal milk? And that's over my head. So I just know that cow's milk is,
Sounds like a Dan problem.
I say,
It's
they
okay.
don't want cow's milk.
Just give them water.
Before.
And you have to have the water available too. That's part of the rules.
No, it's fine, I'll review that with her and get that ready for, try to get it ready for April
Somebody
for
has to look together.
her first read.
And then we got
So if your food service, and Bob, you guys
But if it costs,
want to meet with me and go over some of them and stuff, see what I think,
Probably what we'll do.
I'm happy to help. You just got to let me know.
Thanks, Ed.
Any questions on the policies? I'm sorry, there's a bundle of them.
Thank you
We've
very
had
much, Ed.
a lot of policy changes this whole last year, and it looks like it's continuing.
The
Yes,
only one that bothers me is going back to that parental status, 5751, because we give the students the option of talking to the school nurse, school counselor, and the principal when they're pregnant if they need accommodations, but we don't give those three options for lactation.
We will. We're going to add that.
Okay, it didn't get added, that's why I wanted.
no, and I didn't do any editing because I thought
Okay,
you said
I just
Nicole
wanted to
was
make sure
going to
that
make those
that's
changes. So, because you've got to put your title,
That's fine. but I wanna make
Coordinators
sure
and
I hit
stuff
what
in
she
there.
wants. That's 5751.
Yeah,
We're gonna, that's the Title IX where we're adding, correct? So then we're also gonna add principal,
I think it was
counselor,
in
and
that
nurse.
second paragraph.
Yeah, you're talking about the one about,
Lactation.
lactation, yes. That's fine.
you know, help them
Good catch,
set up a
Kathy.
schedule and a
Yeah.
private location.
Yeah,
No, I'll get that tomorrow.
okay, thank you.
And if you need me to help with it, just tell me who it is and what needs to be done. I'll get to it. Any other questions?
Since you're here, and I don't want to add, but I want to make sure that we're clear. If I go into our meeting on the 13th and our current agenda, which you guys have been sent last week, there is under new business number 8. Currently, it says new revised board policies first reading. These are all, I don't know, if you guys have any questions? I think they're directly treasury related things that Bob had put on there that are already on there. They were not reviewed tonight. Am I correct in saying that?
That they weren't reviewed
Yes.
tonight? Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you guys do have any questions when you see those, I mean, I can just read off. One deals with grant funds, policy 6110. 6111 is internal controls. 6112 is cash management for grants. They're all 6,000. 6114 cost principles or how you spend federal funds. 6325 is procurement of federal funds. 6550 travel payment and reimbursement. Relocation costs. 7310 disposition of surplus property, and 7450 property inventory. And you might be able to speak in that.
So those are your first readings?
That, yes, that the treasurer asked to have on there. I just wanted to make sure, because I didn't want to see, in addition to what we had, you guys would have seen this if you looked, but it is on the draft. So if you had any questions about those, why Ed was here, you can ask. So he's available in case we get that or Bob had any
And
clarification.
really, the short of it is, federal government updates their regulations on how we spend money and how we're allowed to spend money, federal monies, and therefore they're called EDGAR, the U.S. Department of Education General Accounting Rules, or Uniform Grant Guidance. So those are the things that we have to have in place in order for you to spend federal money. They went into effect in August. You got to have them done soon.
That's fair. And my final thing, just to clarify, because these happen a lot, maybe you can explain it, Ed. So Nicole and I, and even Bob, will get an email called like a special update. Could be random, every month, from Neola based on some reason. Are those supposed to be then first reads for the board, or just things that I would send to the board or put on the board agenda for them to see?
Yes, and probably all of it. When you get the email, you need to go and look at them and make sure you look at it right away. The downfall is your contract with Neola, and for me, is just addressed into 2 normal updates that you get.
Correct.
Like the volume 43, number 1 in August, and volume 43, number 2 in Jan. And so.
Okay.
But I'm always available, and I'll help you with that. I just need to know. And when I saw that some of my clients didn't update or upload those special releases, I try to go in there and update it.
and then let them know, hey, this is something that's out there you got to address.
So I guess that's my thing. So if it's a special update, in particular, notifying the board that update is just notifying them. It's not so much a first and second read as much as it will be updated within.
And it's usually a little bit of both. Like, we had laws that changed in October. We made those changes. It changed in December because the General Assembly went and made modifications to it. Then we're seeing different interpretations of it, and so therefore we had to have additional update to correct things at the beginning of February.
Oh my gosh.
And again, it's part of the legislative process where things have been rushed through. They didn't change terminology. They didn't understand the whole operations that the schools are going through. And what seems like a good idea might be on the surface, but when you actually go to implement it and pass regulations, it causes some additional hiccups. So then you have to go and correct those. That's what I think you're going to see in this special update that'll probably come out tomorrow.
No, and that's fine. I just want to make sure as I get those emails, I have a tough time deciding if it's a forward onto the board, and a board update that I give them either that week or the following week or something.
Each one of those special updates is going to give you an overview on why they're changed.
Okay.
So it's probably a good idea to share that with the board.
No, I
and say,
will. I just wanted
these
to
are
know.
going to change because of this rationale. It's
No.
not just something Dan decided to pull out.
No, it seems more recently due to the lame duck session and what's going on with the legislators right now.
And the way things are going, from what I heard this morning, we can expect that inconsistency all the way through July.
Yeah, and as most people can see, a lot of the policy updates that we do are mandated by the state. It's confirming, it's replying and confirming legislation that gets passed. We actually, a big chunk of policy is that.
Thanks for your time tonight, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
You bet.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Humphries?
Yes.
Ms. Krupko?
Yes. Thank you. Good night.
How many schools